If learning to walk on stilts or platform high heels are not on your list of things to tackle today, but you have a pair of pants that are just too long and they need hemmed, then you're going to want to stick around because in today's video, I'm going to be explaining and demystifying Hemming 101, how to hem pants with a straight stitch. Hello, I'm Christine, the Creative Sewist, and I want to welcome you to the Creative Sewist Community YouTube channel, where we discuss sewing tutorials, techniques, tips, and just general sewing tricks that every sewist should know. And if this sounds like your type of community, please consider subscribing to the channel. All you have to do is click that subscribe button that is below this video and turn on the notifications so that you are notified every time new content is uploaded to the channel. And with that, let's get started in today's lesson, Pant Hemming 101. For today's sewing tutorial on hemming, you will need the following tools: a yardstick, an ironing board or a pressing mat. This happens to be a wool pressing mat, a table with a flat surface, a hem gauge or a quilter's ruler with clearly marked numbers, a marking tool such as tailor's chalk or an invisible marking pen, pins, dressmaker shears, a good utility thread, and if you can do it, I highly recommend using a sleeve board whenever you are pressing and marking your hems. They are phenomenal. And if you're going to be doing a lot of hemming, it's worth the investment. If you aren't sure or if this isn't a familiar tool to you, there is a video on the channel that describes these sleeve boards. There's also a video describing different marking tools. There will be a link in the description below to both videos. You will also need a sewing machine with a straight stitch and an iron with different settings. To ensure that we get equal inseam measurements, we are going to be starting with a reference point, and that is going to be the top of this inseam. It's the center of the crotch, and you'll see you have a right pant leg and a left pant leg. So we're going to be measuring from right here. Make a mental note if you decide to measure from the inside or the outside of the seam, but always reference back to that point when you are measuring this inseam. For this particular pair of pants, I need to determine a 28-inch inseam. So what I've done is I've laid my yardstick. I'm starting here at the center point. Right here, I'm going to start on the left side of my seam. And then I'm going to measure down to where I marked the pants at the 28-inch mark. I'm going to repeat this process with the other leg, and then to determine if my measurements are accurate, I'm going to fold the other leg down over the pants, and I'm going to determine if these two pins meet. And by that I mean they have to lay on top of one another to ensure that I have an accurate measurement on both pant legs. If for any reason that these two pins do not line up properly, remeasure your pant inseam until you get these pins to measure together. So once I've determined that my marks are accurate and correct, I'm going to move to the next step, which is marking the upper part over here, as well as this other side of the pant leg, and on the outer seam as well, so that I know where I'm going to have my hem. Now, I'm going to measure this. And in this particular case, for this leg, I'm going to be turning this under 3.5 inches. So that means that I will be moving to the front over here, and I'm going to be placing a pin right here at the 3.5 inch mark. And then again, I'm going to measure over here. I'm going to measure to 3.5 inches. I'm going to be placing another pin here. I will flip this leg over, and then I will measure from the current hem 3.5 inches up, and I'll place another pin. Repeat this process on the other pant leg. Once you've placed your other pins, it's time to just ensure that everything is lining up properly and will look equal when the pants are on the body. So fix your pants out if you haven't already. Just smooth them out, make sure the pant legs are equal, make sure that your pins are equal as well. If anything needs adjusted, now is the time to make that adjustment if necessary. And you'll see I also put a pin there and a pin over there. Now I'm going to switch to my purple pen for marking. If you aren't familiar with them, we have a great video on the channel that describes marking tools for Sewist. There will be a link in the description below to the marking tools video that you can reference. I'm now going to be placing these marks. Again, this is with my purple invisible pen. Don't worry, these marks do wash out. If you aren't sure, check your fabric description on the label. So once I have these purple pens marks placed, I'm going to remove my pins and I'm going to turn the pants inside out and fold up the hems. Once you have your pant leg pinned up, now it's time to do the pressing. I'm going to be using the sleeve board for this step. If you aren't familiar with the sleeve board, we do have a video on the channel that explains what the sleeve boards are for and just a little bit of background on them. I'll put a link in the description below for your reference. In the meantime, I'm going to press these pant legs. I'm just pressing what will be my new hem. Okay, I'm going to press this the whole way around. And once I have them pressed, we're going to mark our new cutting line. You can adjust your pant leg as necessary when you're doing this step. So as you can see, I have this pressed. I've got a nice crease here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now mark where I'm going to cut these pants off. Now we need to remove these pins and just set them aside on your pin cushion, just temporarily. We now need to take a look at the width of the original hem that was on your pants. Now, in my case, this hem is 5/8 of an inch wide, which means I'm going to double that number for my new cut line. So I measured from my crease and I put a mark 1 1/4 inches up. I marked the whole way around. I'll show you here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this leg. I'm going to mark up 1 1/4 inches, and then I'm going to cut at that line. So let me show you here. And you do this the whole way around the pant leg. It just makes things easier whenever you are cutting. It acts as a guide. It's usually easier whenever you have your pants flat on a table. So once I have that marked, I'm going to go and I'm going to cut these off. Now for the cutting part, you want to open this up a little bit, put your hand underneath, and you're going to want to make a little snip. It's usually easier if you go to the side of the seam, and you're going to cut from one point to the next. Be very careful that you don't cut your pant leg during this process. After you've trimmed your pants, you can set the cuffs aside. It's really a good idea to keep those cuttings in a shoebox in your closet, because if you ever get a hole in these pants, that makes the perfect material to make a patch on them. So like I said, I usually just keep the clippings in a shoebox in the closet. That way it's just I know where they are and I can access them quickly if I ever need them. Now you will see that since I've cut this, I still have my pressing here, and now we need to fold this over. So what you'll see is I'm folding the fabric over, folding it down. I'm going to measure this. I want this to be about 3/4 of an inch. Your seam allowance will vary depending on what your seam was at originally. So I'm at 3/4 there. I like to leave a few inches in between these pins. And I'm going to pin this the whole way around. I'll pin one more. And what you will see is that raw edge, this raw edge, is now tucked under. So it gives you a nice clean finish that you don't have to worry about it fraying or unraveling whenever you wash the pants. And to show you, I went ahead and I pinned the other pant leg, and then I gave it, once you have it all pinned, give it a pressing. A lot of prep work, but now it's time to sew in this seam. I have threaded my machine with a thread that closely matches the color of the pants. That's in the needle as well as the bobbin. I have selected a straight stitch, and I'm also going to be using an open toe presser foot for this so that you can see what I am doing. I'm also going to position these pants. I want to stitch as closely as I can to the edge, but I don't want to go off the edge. I also want to make sure that this is even the whole way around. So what I will do is I'm going to lower my needle and I'm going to line this up. My machine has markings on the side of it so that I know how wide my seam will be. If yours doesn't have it, you can either put a piece of tape or just some kind of marking so that you know how wide to make your seam allowance. And you're going to be starting on the inner seam. Do not start the sewing on the outside. You always want to hide as much of your stitches as possible. So I'm going to start on the inseam, the inside seam rather. Take a few stitches forward, then take a couple of stitches back so that you can lock that stitching. I'm going to sew the whole way around. Take your time whenever you're going over the inside seam and the outside seam because you do have several layers of fabric that are folded there. Just take your time, you don't need to rush. Now, when you reach the outside seam, if your pants have been folded several times to create a folded seam, a flat seam, take your time going over this hump. You may have to raise your presser foot and just take one or two steps and then raise it, lower it again until you get over this hump. Do not sew over pins. You can break a needle and damage the machine. Take your time with this hump here. You don't want to pull your fabric as you are sewing. You just want to guide it through. Okay, once you return to your starting point, just take a few steps slowly. Make sure you hit the seam where you started. Oops. I'm going to do a couple back stitches. And that's so that I secure it in place. Take a few stitches forward. I want to cut it. Raise your presser foot and repeat the same process on the other leg. And as you can see on the outside, it's looking pretty good. Once you have sewn in these seams, we now need to go in and remove the marks that we placed for different steps. Also, by the way, if you are enjoying this video, please give it a like so that the YouTube algorithm knows to show it to more people. It's a totally free option that allows you to help support the channel and let others know that, the content's actually pretty good. So I'm just going to take water, because this was one of those purple disappearing ink pens, and I'm just going to rub it with a little bit of water, and then what will happen is this mark will just evaporate. It'll disappear. I'm going to do this on both of my pant legs. And then once I've hit all these marks, I'm going to give this seam a pressing, and I want to press this so that it sets it. Now, if you don't have the sleeve board, you can certainly use, like I said, your ironing board or a pressing mat, and I'll show you how that would work here. Just lift that open. And press it the whole way around. Once you've pressed in the new seam, turn the pants right side out and let's give them another pressing. Now for this pressing, You want to lay your pants, position them on your pressing mat or your iron the way you're going to be wearing them. If you want a crease in the front as well as the back, then you're going to press them this way. If you don't want that crease in your pant leg, then position them on your pressing mat like so, and then give this a nice pressing. This will help set that seam. To finish off the pants, go ahead and press the entire pant leg. And especially if you're hemming them for someone, it just gives them a much more professional look.
If you would like step-by-step instructions for this sewing tutorial, please visit the Creative Sewist blog. There's a link in the description below this video that you can follow for your next hemming project. Before you leave, please remember to give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel and turn on the notifications bell so that you are notified when new content is added to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.